Worst thing I did growing up as a kid. Whew, that's a good question. So I was a relatively good kid. I had a real complex with always wanting to be like better than everybody, and it was like this really awful moral high ground that I saw myself on. So that in and of itself felt like very sinful, or at least looking back, it was like pretty bad that I like had this like really high idea of myself. But man, I just didn't get in trouble that often because of this like sense of morality that I carried around. And so because of that, the worst thing that I did is probably not going to sound very bad. Actually, it's not going to sound bad because it wasn't bad. It's just really something you laugh about now. But when I was in 5th grade, I got like my first like hat for a team that I supported, which was the Cincinnati Bengals. And that's because I really liked their tiger logo. And so I wore the Cincinnati Bengals hat. And when I wore it to class for the first time, I was like, well, obviously I'm going to be the coolest guy here, and I'm going to wear it freaking backwards. But the school had a dress code, obviously. And as a part of that dress code, you can't wear your hat backwards. You got to wear it forwards. And I definitely get it, like looking back now, because we lived in a very like gang-related, or not lived, but we went to school in a very gang-related part of town. And so you couldn't wear your hat backwards in order to like, you know, save yourself from that. And so obviously I was still really, really cool. And so I wanted to make sure that I was looking as cool as possible. And so I like really wanted to wear my hat backwards. So I wore it backwards. And at that point I was in 5th grade. And I remember Mrs. DeCarly really didn't want me to wear my hat backwards because she was a big stickler for the dress code, which makes sense. You know, she was a pretty strict teacher. And so she was like, obviously like, hey guys, like we need to wear our hats forwards and that's the rules and we follow the rules in this class. So Tyler, turn your hat forward. And I'm like, okay, Mrs. DeCarly. And so I turned my hat forward. So I was, I was sitting there like this. I was pretty cool. And then I was like, all right, Mrs. DeCarly, cool. And then we went out to recess. Or no, it was the end of class that day. It was the end of class. And so I walk out the door and I say way louder than I should have. I was like, this is what I did. Whatever. And I turned my hat backwards and I walked away. And she heard me say that. And she yelled back at me. And she's like, you get back here right now. And saw that I had my hat on backwards after she had pretty strictly told me not to have my hat on backwards. And boy, was I in trouble. That's right, guys. I turned my hat backwards. Real badass. And she called my mom and basically got the authorities involved. And I was in so much trouble for talking back to the teacher and not doing what she wanted me to do. And it was this whole deal. And that was the most trouble I got in when I was a kid. So beat that!